they were massacred a mile from their home. They were leaving. It was 10:30 in the morning when I got the news. So this wasn't in the middle of the night, and it wasn't as remote of a place as you think. Yes, it is a remote road in Mexico, but it's their remote road in Mexico. You know what I mean? It's this is a passage that they go daily. People from those towns drive those roads. Like that's how they get to the nearest grocery store. You know, they live on this kind of like a homestead, a Mormon homestead in Sonora. Um, I'm not from La Mora, where the massacre took place. I'm from another Mormon colony that's in the neighboring state, Chihuahua. It's like 3.5 hours from there. So I had never actually been to that area. But it's you know, they've got 50 homes there. It's not small, you know, and then they have another town right there, you know, they're neighbors, you know, so it's not so remote. So the leading up to the events, there had been like a couple, the violence had seemed to be escalating between the cartels with previously with 6 months, let's call it, to a year. So they'd had a little bit more interactions where they'd been stopped by cartels and things like that. And I know this sounds like, how did anybody leave their house? Wasn't it instantly martial law? Well, that's kind of the way things are in Mexico now. So being stopped by military or cartel with big guns or things like that is what's happening in Mexico. So it wasn't the most insane thing, even though it seems like it now in hindsight. But the violence had been escalating. So because of that, these three women that all had different places they needed to be decided to kind of drive out together, you know, to kind of caravan, so to speak, through this mountain pass that you kind of lose service at the top of it before you get down into the bigger town. My sister's vehicle had broken down. So one of the other mothers, women that had been murdered, drove her back, but didn't want to wait for her. And the other woman took off ahead, was like, I'm not waiting for you guys, not worth it. It's like, you know, this is their own, they've been on this road 1,000 times. They weren't that stressed, a little bit, but not that stressed. So my sister borrows her mother-in-law's vehicle, doesn't wait, tells her brother-in-law, you need to go get my car, it's broken down, doesn't wait for him. She leaves in her mother-in-law's vehicle, unloads all her stuff, her kids. She had her my 12-year-old nephew, my 10-year-old niece, and her twins with her. So imagine she's got all this luggage, she's unloading in the middle of this like road that she broke down on and took off. So when her brother-in-law shows up to pick up this broken down vehicle to see what happened to the wheel, right? He's kind of working on the tire, and all of a sudden he looks up and he sees like black smoke, like black smoke, and thinks that's so weird. Like, is someone's car on fire? You know, what's going on up there? And so he drives up almost to offer help to whoever's having, you know, issues with the vehicle up there. And when he pulls up to the site, like I said, it's about a mile from their like houses and hometown. He recognizes his mother's vehicle, and it's all shot up and it's on fire. And at this point, the blaze is so big that he can't even get close enough to see if they are inside or not. Like the fire's too strong. He sees men dressed in military fatigues, you know, like military style, running down the side of the mountain, and kind of gets scared, doesn't know what's going on, and goes back home for help. So when they all gather together, you know, a bunch of men to go see what's happening, what happened to the vehicle. By the time they get back up there, they'd even sent drones up there. I mean, at this point, they're afraid. Like, you're in Mexico, you are the first responders, but they're afraid. They don't know what's going on. So had drones go up there, they see the vehicle on fire, they don't see anybody around it. So they drive up, and I don't know if you watched the video of Kenny Miller where he says, you know, it's on YouTube and stuff, you know, this is for the record. Anita and 4 of my grandchildren have been burnt. And that's when we got the news that their bodies, that they had been in the vehicle, you know, and that they had been shot up and burned. So at this point, they don't know, nobody knows what has happened to the other 2 women and their children. I got the news at 10:30. The entire country got the news around 10:30. Like, everybody knew what was happening. I was on Victoria Island up in Canada on an anniversary trip. And At first, when I got the news, I thought the vehicle shot up. This first thing that came through, you WhatsApps, like everybody has a family WhatsApp. So the second someone posts something, it just spreads like fire. So the first news that I received was something had happened to Nita. The vehicle had been shot up. That's it. So in my mind, I'm like praying like with God that, that they're okay, that they're probably been kidnapped at this point. I'm thinking of my sister and I'm thinking of poor little Crystal and I'm thinking like rape, and those are the things that are going through my mind, like that they've been
Yeah,
kidnapped.
things that we've heard to be common practice, kind of in that. Yeah.
So at that point, that's what I'm thinking. And we're trying to get back because you kind of have to take seaplanes off of Victoria. And there'd been fog that morning that it held us back. So we're trying to figure out, we're kind of just in shock and walking back to see if we can get off the island. And my husband Dustin just walked like, I don't know, 10 feet further in front of me. Like, I don't know, he must have had a feeling, and he's listening to the WhatsApps that are coming through. And he just turns around and he tells me, babe, they're all gone. They're all burnt. They're just all gone. And I just fell to the ground. I was sobbing. I just was so like, it just seems so impossible, right? Just still seems so impossible, this story. Like, I feel like I'm living in a different time in a different world. Um, as things progress, like I said, at this point, you're in so much shock, you don't quite, know what to do. So I was just kind of sitting there in my own thoughts, but Dustin was following what was actually taking place in La Mora. And he sat down and he said, your parents are going up there. He said the police haven't showed up. It's been hours. Nobody has shown up and nobody knows what happened to the other two women, and they're up in the mountain and nobody will show up and help. And so your family, I think you need to call your dad and tell him not to go. I'm worried about your parents. So I called my dad and I said, Dad, I don't want you to go. I'm so scared. And he said, Mija, I'm going to get my daughter. If you want to pray for me, pray for me. Talk to your mom. And I talked to my mom and I said, Mom, I'm just so worried. And she's like, sweetheart, no one's coming to save us. It's just us. We're going to help and we're going to go find those other moms and we're going to go see what's happening. And my parents were about 3.5 hours from La Mora. They weren't right next door. So them and a whole group of like, my mom was the only female, but a group of like probably I'm gonna say 30 men. I don't know how many took off from my hometown to go offer aid, right? Assistance to see what was happening. They were stopped at multiple military stops along the way, which we now believe was on purpose to give the cartel a chance to get away. When they're arriving, when they get to that first town before you head up to the mountain pass, they actually meet up with Donna's husband, David. Donna was one of the other women that was murdered that day, along with her two boys. She had 9 children in her vehicle, and 7 survived, and the other 2 were murdered.
Could you clarify for me? So several vehicles were shot up in the same.
Yeah, so at this point, we don't know that yet of the story. We're just, at this point, Nita was no. So we still don't know what had happened to those other 2 women. But at the both women were murdered and 2 more children were murdered and the other survivors were shot up.
And
But
was this separate locations or one location?
location. So that's what people get confused. Because Christina had taken off up the mountain pass, we now believe she was actually murdered first. And she was in her vehicle with her baby Faith in a car seat, just 2. She actually got out of the vehicle as a woman, put her arms up, and they shot her anyways. When so Donna's ahead of Nita, right? Because she dropped her off and she was ahead of my sister Nita. When she gets up to the pace, but it's more like 5 miles, I think, away. So she was miles ahead of Nita, now up in that mountain pass a little more. So when she arrives, they actually see Christina's body on the ground and started trying to reverse. And that's when the whole vehicle just gets shot up. And 2 boys and Donna were murdered. I think 1 or 2 of the kids actually were not injured. And then the other ones were all shot up from gunshot wounds to their chest, their whole faces were shot up, arms, legs. And they actually were left up in that mountain with no government showing up. When my mom, I believe it was about 8 o'clock at night, when my mom, that caravan coming from my hometown that had met up with Donna's husband, David, that was coming down from the Phoenix, Tucson area, showed up. And that's when they actually first found out that baby Faith had survived, because nobody even knew she was alive in the other vehicle. She had 2 bullets in her car seat. And those children, at first they tried to walk home all together, but they were all so shot up that they ended up having Devin, who was 14, I believe at the time, walk home. And he said he at points was being shot at. It took him all day to get back to the town to tell them that his mom and Christina were dead, that the 2 boys were dead, and that his siblings were hiding up in the mountains, shot up.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, it's awful. It's stories.
And those kids, I couldn't
when I
imagine.
testimony, I mean, they said that when they were trying to walk, right? They was like, well, how did you do that? And they said, well, we had my little brother on a pillow, kind of holding his face up, and we would walk, and then like 20 feet, and we'd set him down on the road, and then we'd go back for the other baby that was shot up, and then we'd walk 40 feet, and then we'd walk back. And imagine they have to set these kids down, and they're also all shot up. Like, their survival story is insane, honestly. And the first thing every one of them said was, we have to go back. We have to go back for the others, you know? It's just, so Devin says that they just knew they weren't getting anywhere, right? So they decided to kind of hide out and let just one of them go, because it was just taking too long. And they were afraid too. I mean, all these cartels all around them, gunshots all around them. And so when they ended up, Devin ended up taking so long that they ended up sending the 9-year-old who was shot in her arm, and she ended up getting lost. And they didn't find her. She was the last one to be found, because she had taken like the wrong little road trying to find her way home. But we're talking 9:30 at night, this little 9-year-old out there trying to get
Did
home.
she pass away?
No, she survived. She's a survivor. First thing she said, it's pitch black outside. I don't think 9:30, 10 o'clock by then. And they said that she had taken the lights. It was cute. Her dad was the one when he was on the scene. And so my mom was sitting next to her dad, and she said, so first they come across this scene, and it's the first time, like, so at this moment they had gotten a call that they were dead, because Devin had made his way home. So they didn't know they were showing up to bodies. So when they show up along this mountain pass, and that's when they discover baby Faith alive, he's just there with his wife, right? His wife's body, and these 2 boys, right? And the other kids are gone. Well, but the kids had been picked up by other people coming up from the other side. Well, all of a sudden somebody ran up to him and told him that the Mackenzie was missing, that she was lost, that nobody knew where she was. And my mom said it was instant. It went from like the most guttural grief of a dad to, my gosh, I still have a daughter I need to save. Somewhere in these crazy mountains, I have to go find this daughter, you know? And it just like switched mode. She said it was crazy, but he was the one that said, well, you can see the lights to Bavispe, but you can't see the lights of La Mora. So she probably went to Bavispe. And that's where they found her. She had thrown her shoe at a rattlesnake along the route. So she was one shoe on, one shoe off. And she was just walking down the road heading towards this town. And first thing she said, I'm telling you, freezing night. And she said, we just have to go back. We have to go back up there. We have to go find the other kids. My brothers and sisters are up there. And they told her, no, they're okay. We got them now, sweetheart. We got them, you know. And they were all rushed. Honestly, it's like, yeah, it's a crazy story. It's still beyond words. Like I said, it feels like you're
Very,
of a war.